Welcome to Sculpture Studios. This was a nice project to take on. We were approached by Ray Mason from J Signs, who wanted a semi-3-dimensional sign made. It's for the new Jamie Oliver restaurant, soon to be opening in Denman Street in London, and Ray found us on the web and sent us through an email with a 2D design. He asked if we could create it double-sided and exactly the same on each side, and we said yes, we can. First of all, we discussed tweaking the design slightly, so the peripheral around the edge is a mirror image on each side. This would mean that we only need to create one master pattern, one mould, and two casts, knowing that they're going to be identical when they're put back to back. Here you can see we're using the tissue tracing with the original concept image on it, and it's split down the middle and flipped over to make sure the two sides of the sculpture follow the same line. Aden begins by sculpting the clay, creating depth and bringing the 2D image off of the page. It's handy having additional knowledge of architectural design, and Aden's well versed in the kind of forms to expect from this sort of sculpture. He's created architectural pieces in the past, and he's used to carving shield heraldry. He lets the clay reach a leathery stage, and finishes by sharpening up the finer detail. When he's happy, he builds a wall around the edge, and uses silicone rubber to take a mould. By using an air gun, it allows him to push the rubber into the finer detail, releasing any air bubbles, and lets him do this without having to physically touch the clay. He then leaves it to let the mould set. Here you can see he's gone all the way up to the clay wall with the silicone. The first layer was to get into all the detail, the second layer floods it, and when he goes on to add the third and final layer, he adds these battens, which will help locate the rubber in the jacket that we're about to make for it. The benefits of using silicone rubber are that it can reach all the detailed areas, and it's flexible enough to be removed from them. It's better for smaller, more intricate designs like this, as in larger quantities it can be expensive, so it isn't always advisable for every kind of job. The jacket's made from glass fibre and resin, and this is created to house the rubber mould. It helps it keep its form when it's turned on its back and the casts are being laid up into it, otherwise without this, the silicone would just lose its form and collapse. Aden's taking care when removing the mould to preserve the clay pattern underneath, just in case any changes need to be made to the design or a second rubber mould needs to be taken for any reason. With the clay at a leathery stage, it can be removed without any damage or deforming to the original pattern. The rubber's placed in its jacket and it's pushed down so that all the detail sinks in. To begin the casting process, we give the internal of the mould a gel coat to give it a relatively smooth finish when the cast is released. We then go over with a little sprinkling of chopped strand to ensure that the fiberglass will hold onto the gel coat in the more detailed areas. The casts are laid up with 2 layers of 1 ounce glass fibre to make sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies, and a layer of 2 ounce on top for more strength, bearing in mind that we were very conscious of trying to keep the weight down. The silicone's carefully removed, as the second cast still needs to be taken from it. It's placed back in its jacket to save it going baggy. Here's the cast, fresh from the mould, and now it's being trimmed up on the edges to get rid of the flash. A second identical cast has been taken from the rubber mould, both cleaned up along all the edges, and now Aden's seeing how they line up. This is where we'll see whether the original clay sculpting was accurate enough to line up on either side when the pattern's flipped around. The closer the patterns are, the easier they'll be to join. No changes need to be made and no more casts taken, as these two came out lovely. Although the clay was nice and smooth, more cleaning up is needed after the casting stage in order to create a beautiful finish. This all takes time, and we go over with a couple of applications of blue paint to see where we need to retouch areas. We invite the client down to see the casts and get his approval on the internal metalwork that's being created to fit inside. Once he's happy that everything's in order and on schedule, we proceed to join in the cast with the metalwork added. We bond them both together and make good the seam line by rubbing it back and reapplying the filler so that it looks like it's one single moulded piece. Once we're happy that all these edges are nice and neat, Aden goes on with a white primer that the client's requested so that his paints can be applied easily. A lot of the time we do the actual artwork here in our studio, and we often go to site for installations depending on the job and see the project all the way through. But Ray said he had his own art team on hand for the painting and engineers to fit the sign, so it was interesting to see how it was going to turn out once it had left our workshop. They sprayed the sign with various royal looking colours so it really stood out, with a gold leaf effect reflecting the light on the edge, and here it is, all set up on location in London, ready for the opening of the restaurant. Please feel free to leave any comments below, as they're always appreciated, and hit the subscribe button for our latest videos. You can like Sculpture Studios on Facebook, and for more of our work, visit sculpturestudios.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching.